Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. President Trump announced today on Truth Social that he fully expects to be arrested and indicted by Joe Biden and Merrick Garland's Justice Department in connection with the events of January 6th. Another indictment and another arrest of Donald Trump, the leading candidate to replace Joe Biden in next year's presidential election. Is this how a republic is supposed to work? Is this how a constitutional republic is supposed to operate? Joining us right now is Mercedes Schlapp, of course, political commentator, veteran of the Trump White House and the Trump campaign in 2020. Mercedes, first of all, every time this happens to Donald Trump, he ends up gaining 5 or 10 points. So politically, this actually sort of helps him in a way.
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned whether it was a constitutional republic or not. It sounds more like a banana republic, something you see in, for example, Latin American countries or even African countries. And it's just so, I think, discouraging for Americans because they're saying, wait a second here, why are you, Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, going after your political opponent? It's very clear that this continues to build this narrative that even the leftist media agrees with, which is that Trump is guilty, that Trump needs to be put in jail, and that Trump can't run again. And so what you're seeing is with every indictment, Donald Trump's poll numbers continue to go up.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody would think that they would be doing this if he weren't running for president, if he weren't leading the race right now. And the latest poll shows that he's beating Joe Biden head to head. So this looks like this weaponization of the Justice Department. Here's what I'm not understanding, though, Mercedes, and maybe you paid closer attention than I did, but I followed the 2-year extravaganza of the January 6th Select Committee. I've seen all of the evidence. What have they got? There's no criminal action here by the president. It looks like a trumped-up charge.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw during those J6 committee hearings that it was a very one-sided attempt to basically try to pretend that Donald Trump was guilty. I mean, you had these pseudo-Republicans and the never-Trumpers, Liz Cheney, Adam Kissinger. Obviously, they are no longer in office. They no longer represent, I would say, the Republican Party, with their target of saying Donald Trump is guilty and really going after his associates. And I just feel that, look, while January 6th was a dark moment in our history, when you look at the facts, it's very clear that Donald Trump had nothing to do with January 6th. He was talking about a peaceful protest. He wasn't the instigator behind this. And what they've done to many of these J6 individuals who are in jail, I mean, they're not even getting the appropriate due process. Instead, they've just kept them in jail without letting them have their time to make sure that they can make their own case.
Yeah, and so now we've got this phony indictment out of Manhattan that the district attorney there has put forth. People have forgotten about that one now, right? And then you've got this indictment over the classified documents where, of course, Joe Biden can have piles and piles of classified documents in his garage where Hunter is skulking around. No problem there. Now you've got this potential pending indictment over January 6th. Donald Trump is an American citizen. He has a right to a full, robust defense against these criminal charges. How can he possibly do that and at the same time run for president?
Look, several things, right? You also have the potential indictment in Georgia. This is the goal, to make sure that Donald Trump is very distracted, that Donald Trump feels the pressure from the judicial system to basically get out of the race. And that's what I think the goal is from the Democrats.
Yeah.
For a long time, the Democrats, many of them had said, that Donald Trump committed treason, that he should not be able to run for office again. So they're going to put every obstacle in place so that Donald Trump cannot be the Republican candidate. And I have to say, Republicans, conservatives, even independents, are pushing back and saying, this is an outrage. This is an abuse of power coming from the Biden administration. And, not only do they do this with all these indictments, but think about the Russian hoax, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
That lasted for multiple years, and that at the end turned out to be a farce.
Right. And by the way, this also comes just days after a 2-week investigation over cocaine left in the White House, and they claim, we have no idea who did it. We guess we'll never know. Case closed. Every single American watching this place out shows they see the double standard, and they see that people are treated differently in the eyes of the law. This is so degrading to our republic.
Well, Larry, you've been at the White House many times, and that area that they specifically talked about in where the cocaine was left. It's not a very heavy traffic area.
Right.
And the mere fact is that the Secret Service cannot identify the individual. I just can't believe it. I just don't believe it. It is truly something that has left us perplexed, and I think the White House is hoping that this story goes away.
And Mercedes, let's face it, I mean, you worked at the White House, you worked at 2 White Houses, and there are fine people in the Secret Service. They do an incredible job of keeping the president and the cabinet and the staff safe there. But let's face it, someone's able to bring in a foreign substance in a plastic, that could have been anthrax, Mercedes. They were able to bring it in under the Secret Service's nose. That is a failure of the Secret Service in one respect, so they shouldn't have been the ones to investigate this in the first place. They have a conflict of interest.
Right, and if it is a staffer, remember the FBI, before you even enter and get a job at the White House, you have to go through a series of questions where they ask you, have you taken illegal substances? Have you taken illicit drugs? And so I think the mere fact that they couldn't get to the bottom of this is very problematic. And as you mentioned, it could have been anthrax. It could have been something that obviously would have been dangerous for the staff.
Right.
I mean, cocaine is dangerous, but something that really could have impacted the White House. So it's very troubling that the Secret Service decided to say, you know what, we can't figure this out. And it really, I think, is very frustrating to the rest of the American people.
Yeah, you listen, you know your presidential politics, and I know that you're as fascinated as I am in how this entire Republican nomination process is playing out. We had a big weekend last weekend with Tucker Carlson interviewing many of the candidates one-on-one in Iowa, and then Charlie Kirk's great event with Turning Point down in West Palm Beach, Florida. In your opinion, the other Republicans in the race, they have every right to run against Donald Trump, of course, but they have to figure out a way to run in such a way that they're supportive of the president, but at the same time make the case that maybe it's time for a new choice. And they also have to voice outrage about what's going on with the Justice Department. In your mind, who's actually done the best job of sort of threading that needle and walking that tightrope of being just as outraged about the crimes, the criminal behavior of the Justice Department against Donald Trump, but at the same time saying, vote for me?
Hands down, Vivek Ramaswamy has been the strongest candidate in terms of threading that needle, talking about the America First politics, talking about that Vivek is presenting ideas without attacking Donald Trump. I think what he's realized, as has, I would say, Tim Scott, is you can't out-Trump Trump. And that's been the biggest error that Ron DeSantis and his campaign team, what they've done. When you have Ron DeSantis going after President Trump on the border, that's the most ridiculous direction a campaign can take, because it was Donald Trump who actually brought to light the horrors at the border as he focused to build the wall, as he focused to make sure that he had policies in place that would discourage an open border policy. So I think Ron DeSantis has really missed the mark. He went after the president even on trying to paint him as this extreme when it comes to LGBTQ issues, which was like a dumb ad they put in place. They actually put an ad out where they used an AI voiceover on President Trump. Again, a fake ad, in my opinion. I really believe that Ron DeSantis needs to fire his campaign team. It's been a disservice to him, and not and if he even has a chance of trying to gain some leverage against the president.
It's like Rudy Giuliani's 2008 campaign apparatus just stayed there in Florida and picked up with Ron DeSantis. Every mistake so far. There's more to come. Keep it here on O'Connor Tonight.